Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the August 2015 RetirementHomes.com webinar. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. This month, our presentation, The Future is Here. Position yourself to be the leader in technologies that will change the face of senior living. RetirementHomes.com, for those who are not aware, we are the world's largest online directory and resource for senior living communities and resources. We present webinars, newsletters, and a lot of online content directory as well, and webinars as well, such as the one you're about to hear. And so today our guest speaker is Lisa Cheney, President and CEO of Mosaic Design Group. So she's going to walk you through a little bit about how you can use technological advancements to boost occupancy, increase revenue, and cement your place in the senior living industry. I don't want to steal her thunder, but definitely want to just let Lisa get in right to it. So Lisa, please.
Hi, well thank you very much, and thank you for everybody taking their time out of their day to listen to the webinar. Hopefully you'll be able to gain some insight that can help you for the future. We're going to start off with talking about why we do this. And I love this quote, that my interest is in the future because I'm going to spend the rest of my life there. Next, we're going to get on the same page. So everyone's definition of technology is a little bit different, but the actual definition, if you look up in the dictionary, is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. So if we understand that technology is really tools and that it doesn't have to be electronics, some of the things that I'm going to talk about are low tech, some are very high tech. But if you can kind of open up your brain and be open to low, high tech, medium, I think you'll get more value out of the presentation. So with that, we're going to start off with that technology is simple. You know, it goes from the stone tools that were 2.6 million years ago in Ethiopia, all the way to the first net that was in 8500 BC. This really changed our world and separates us from animals. Next, we're going to talk about what the elephant in the room is, and that is fear of the future. So you've probably all seen this movie, or maybe the 15 versions of it. 1984, the book also did a great job of instilling fear of sensors and surveillance, and Hollywood really has taken this to the next level. This is from a movie that talks about robots really having an altruistic idea and where technology is, and then all of a sudden they decide that they're smarter than we are, and either we need to be eliminated or we need to be helped. And so people quite often have that idea of technology, that the farther you get into AI or anything to help you, there could be some extreme risks in it. But we have to understand that all technology can get corrupted by man, and it's for good or evil. And usually it always wins for the good. This is from a Will Smith movie that we have to understand fear is not real. It's our reality and how we look at it. So it's a product of thoughts. As we're going through the presentation, what I want you to think of, there's going to be some things that you think is like crossing Niagara Falls on a tightrope or a tight wire. I don't want you to think that way. I want you to start with baby steps. So I want you to think of, you know, what technology do you have that you will already use, maybe in even your personal life versus your homes? Like, do you have a smoke detector? Do you use a cell phone, GPS, a Fitbit, Bluetooth, a laptop, Wi-Fi, OnStar? Do you have an electric toothbrush? Do you have heated floors? The point is that the technology surrounds us every day, and that confidence comes in how we use technology by incremental little kind of gains. We don't start off walking across Niagara Falls. We start off walking on a little beam or across the street, and then we gain our muscle memory and we go further and further. It's a lot like stick shift or learning to drive that. All of a sudden it becomes automatic. So now that we understand that we have to kind of not be worried about how much or how little we know about technology, we have to go back to Maslow's ladder and start looking at the basic needs, the physical needs, safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, and self-actualization. And as senior living providers, we want to provide as much of these as possible. What technology does is it should fulfill the basics. And if we can get the basics fulfilled, if we can get our safety, our physiological needs fulfilled, then we can move on to love and belonging and self-esteem and then higher up, which improves quality of life. Now, I'm going to tell you 3 different tales before we get into what type of technologies you may or may not be able to use. And what I want you to understand is that before I get into this, even if you get one thing out of this, you're ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the curve because you decided to show up today and listen to this. So the first tale is about vision. The second one is going to be about fear. And the third one is going to be about ignorance. So Hoover was a guy that was a taxidermist and made saddles, and he grew up in Canton, Ohio. And this was in about 1849 he was born, and he was a tanner, and he saw that the Model T was coming on board. And, you know, Ford had a vision and Hoover had a vision. But he got really, really nervous because he saw that cars were probably going to take over his making of saddles and destroy his industry. It was a disruptive technology. And I think most of you are facing that today, that you can find technology in Lowe's or in an Apple store that you don't even have in your homes, yet your end users, your baby boomers, your older daughters have access to. So Hoover had this awesome kind of epiphany when his wife was loaned a vacuum cleaner to use, and he saw how it reduced her workload and changed everything. So he went out and he bought the patent from John Murray Spengler's patent for the upright vacuum cleaner, and he created the Hoover Vacuum Company. And it reinvented his whole company. He stopped being a tanner. He used the technology. It actually, a lot of people say, it changed what women are able to do today. And maybe I wouldn't even be doing this webinar had it not been for the vacuum cleaner. I would still be cleaning the house and doing other things. To this day, it's about 100 years later that if you're over in England, they call it hoovering versus vacuuming. Now, it's not to say that he doesn't have some rough competition now with Dyson, but that is a tale of vision. The next one is Kodak, and that is a tale that is of fear. Kodak, as you know, their mission was to capture once-in-a-lifetime moments, and they actually invented digital technology. But their fear of losing their cash cow, which was selling chemicals and paper, was 95% of their business in their revenues, kept them from moving forward with the technology that they created, which was digital. So a 134-year-old company went bankrupt in 2012 due to fear. And if you contrast that to Instagram, Instagram decided that they were going to capture and share once-in-a-life moments, which I hope you see the connection there. They were going to do it for free. They had 13 people, and they sold to Facebook in 2 years for $1 billion in cash. Next, we're going to talk about ignorance. And ignorance it's a funny thing because it's really hard to see when you're in it. There is a joke now that if you see a travel agency that has a brick storefront like I'm showing on this webinar, that it actually is a front for the mob or the CIA or something like that, because we don't actually have those. And what happened was travel agents overvalued themselves when a technology came on. There was the president of American Airlines. He sat on a plane with a salesman from IBM, and they talked on this ride. And he talked about the problems of a customer would call a travel agency, then they would have to call American Airlines, then they would give them a price, then they would go back to the customer, give them that, get approval, and by the time they came back to American Airlines, the flight was either gone or the price had went up or whatnot. And the salesman from IBM said, I can fix that. We can do a real-time situation where you're able to handle that. So they did that, and that was called a Sabre system, and my sister was actually trained on that with American Airlines. They decided, though, to make that available on computers. So anyone with an internet connection could use this. What travel agents didn't realize was that barrier to entry, and what they needed, they didn't need a travel agent. They just needed a flight book. So if it wasn't a specific thing or they didn't have knowledge of it, it was easier than talking to a travel agent just to go online and book it. And the birth, it went from Sabre Systems to Travelocity, and you know what happened there. So what I want to tell you, basically, I'm just going to go back to this, is that you might be in a different place today. You could be, though, in one of vision, and I believe you are, or you wouldn't have been here today. And hopefully, if you're in one of fear, we can move you out of that, and we can also expose you to things so that you're not in a place of ignorance. But if you're at the end of this better off than you were before, more knowledgeable, that's a win for us. The next is that although I don't play hockey, and I never have, I think this is the kind of mentality that you have to have. That you've got to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it's been. And that is how you head towards the future. You can't be catching up with your competition. You have to be aggressively going after what technology can actually benefit you. It all, it has to have a return on investment and fit within code and such and work with your mission, but you have to move towards it. So I just want to ask you to think for a second. Are you a travel agency? Are you Kodak? Or are you Hoover? So now we talked about the elephant in the room. This is a different elephant. You've probably seen this cartoon before. This is how you need to kind of look at technology, especially in senior living. Technology seems to be like all these guys that are blindfolded, that when they're describing it to you, it's completely different and not connected. And I just want you to understand through this presentation that if I'm talking about a disruptive technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or robotics or 3D printing or lighting, LED or OLED, they are all connected. You can't separate one from the other. But your vendors and your providers tend to do that. And we really don't have an integrated solution at this time. Now, this is all well and good, but I want you to recognize that it's here to stay. Some people say, no, we've been doing the same thing we have been doing. We've had a hard enough time getting on electric medical records. These magazines were from, I think, a year or two ago, and you can't pick up one without seeing something that is disrupting our world. This is akin to the airplane and manufacturing. It is just going to completely change us, and we're going to never be able to go back. So through the presentation, I want you to think of how can technology improve the quality of life for your residents, reduce risk, or improve your bottom line. Now, when I talked about technology, remember I talked about low-tech and high-tech. So this was low-tech in Germany in a pharmacy, and I thought it was brilliant. On the one side, you have a purse hook. On the other side, you have a magnifying glass so folks can read the prescriptions or look at what's in a bottle. It can be as simple as this. It's about understanding your customer and adapting something to make their life easier or using a tool. So the technologies that we're going to talk about, there's 6 different ones. I'm going to ask you to think which ones will you embrace or adopt, and it might just be one little thing. Please don't get overwhelmed and don't think that you have to take everything on. It might just be something really tiny, but it will move you forward and you'll be ahead of the rest. First one we're going to talk about is sensors and wearable technology. Then OLED lighting technology, crowdsourcing and gamification, robots and technology, data mining and artificial intelligence, and 3D printing technology. So as we go through these, I'm going to be doing some a little bit fast, some a little bit slow. You can contact me afterwards if you want more information, but there's just too much to hit in great detail on everything. Moore's law, you have to understand that if you're going to talk about technology, is the law of us being able to get things smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's a microchip. And they actually thought that Moore's law was finally going to run out, but they found out that it didn't. So this goes through and kind of talks to you about printing. And if you look at the timeline from 1452 to where we are now, on my infographic I have it to 2010. I don't know about you all, but I remember the first fax machine. I don't know if you can think back to that, but my boss would not let me fax unless it was absolutely necessary. It was $4, and it was on that thermal paper. And we were used to mailing things and calling on the phone. That was our technology. There was no internet. There was no anything. And now it's my phone right now is not syncing properly with my calendar, and I'm having a heart attack. So, I've become almost kind of one with my technology. So going through that, I think that you understand also the cell phones have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and now the cell phones that we're using, it's like carrying a computer around actually in the palm of your hand. The technology that Bill Clinton had from a cell phone standpoint and technology standpoint is less than a kid in Africa holds in his hands. Now we're going to go back to some basic technology, but also let you know that people have been doing this forever, and we're going to go back to Maslow's needs. So our basic needs to eat, to be able to take care of our sanitation and such, go back forever. And this is Crete. This is a Minoan civilization. Some people think that it's Atlantis. But the first flushing toilet was built over 4,000 years ago. Now, I'm going to talk about a tacky subject, but everybody does it. So I'm going to talk about plumbing and toilets. And you all know that that's a big part of the ADLs. Water and wells throughout history have been foundational. You don't win a war unless you control the water. You don't grow a civilization unless you control the sanitation. And we really define our cultures based on that. We judge a society based on how we're able to deliver the water and whether it's a third world or a first world. And according to water.org, 3.4 million people each year die from water-related diseases, which is really hard to believe in this world. And it's critical to understand that this is a basic need for seniors, and we need to use technology so that we can focus on their higher needs. And if we can take care of all those types of things, then your job is a lot easier, they're a lot happier, and their quality of life is increased. This is an outhouse. Back even in the 20s, there were still lots of these in the United States and throughout the rest of the world. And in the 1830s, the sewer systems emptied into our streams and rivers, causing outbreaks in cholera. And it's pretty astonishing to me that right now, there's 2.5 million people, or 40% of the world's population, that don't have access to a toilet. But the number of cell phones surpassed the world's population last year. So that's pretty amazing. Infrastructure is the key to my point, so much. Well, I'm going to switch back. That the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has actually got a contest out there on reinventing the toilet and not having infrastructure. So some of the things that I'm going to show you relate to not having infrastructure. Others do relate to infrastructure. And then this, I kind of skipped ahead on the slide. Some people get a little crazy, and I'm not even sure what they're doing there, but they kind of merge technologies, and merging technologies doesn't always work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Now this is, kind of a picture of what an ideal bathroom is. Not in senior living, but the tub, it's glamorous. To think that some folks, 2.4 million don't have access to toilets, and yet in the U.S., ours are, Taj Mahals. This is also what you see. They're integrating lighting. It is actually become more spa-like, and it is a place of rest and recuperation and harmony and peace. It is one of the things that is a horrific experience if you have to have someone help you to do it. So the more that you can do to help the person feel dignified and independent, the better off we are. We're going to talk about toilets a little bit in the future, but I just wanted to set the pace that we need to talk about fundamentals first before we go into this, and this will go through the whole rest of the presentation. So now we're going to go on to sensors and wearable technology. And here we go. This is a toilet seat. It senses when you sit down. So it is a bidet. It won't spray unless you're on it. It is heated. It is antimicrobial, antibacterial. It is your night light. It also will blow dry you, and it doesn't require any infrastructure. And in Japan, they even have these in all throughout the public restrooms. I am right now trialing this out in my own home. I have a social experiment going on. I have my parents that are 74 and 76, and my grandmother with dementia that is 93. We have installed these toilets in every single room and seeing how they function, and everyone absolutely loves them. They've actually thanked me because it allows them to be more dignified and take care of themselves longer. My mom with my grandmother has thanked me profusely. So I think there's something to that. And then we have a client right now that is actually trialing them out in about 15% of their rooms. So we're doing we're doing some lighting and some other things. So we're trying to push the boundaries and say, you know what, if this technology is out there, why not use it in senior living, especially independent or assisted? And everyone kind of asks me, well, how much is it? How much is it? There are very expensive ones out there, but these range about $300 a toilet seat. So it's not expensive. It's a huge win in value, and it really increases independence, dignity of life, and quality. So next, when we talk about sensors, I just want you to think, people usually think of sensors and surveillance, and they get very, very nervous. But the first cars didn't have gas gauges. We use sensors all the time. That's an alarm clock as a sensor. It really helps us to understand and to know what's going on and when we should do something. You know, if you didn't have a gas gauge, you're worried. At one point, I actually had a car that the gas gauge was broken, and I'd have to, you know, write down what the mileage was and then time my mileage and see when I needed to fill it again. And I operated in fear. So you live with them every day, with smoke detectors, with maybe your car backing up, a thermometer. Your oven has a sensor to let you know the temperature, and we can even get monitors on our cars and get safe driving discounts. The point is, they can be more for good than not, and just kind of a lot of folks think that it's a bad thing. I know in hospitals and acute care, when we started doing sensors to time caregivers, it actually increased the quality of care that was being given, and it gave you a sense of being able to handle things before they got too bad. Where you might have an associate that wasn't doing their job, you were able to see that very quickly on their response time versus waiting till something went wrong with the patient. Now this, I don't know whether you've seen it or not, but this is in Lowe's store. So Lowe's has decided to get into the senior living industry. I was kind of shocked about 5 years ago when they started offering ADA tubs and sensors and lights, and now they have this integrated technology, and what they've seen is kids that are younger and seniors that are at home for a sandwich generation, they can put in, and for $29 a month, you can tag it and figure out that Grandma hasn't gotten into the refrigerator in the last 24 hours, and you're traveling, and yet she's telling you she's eating, and you know she hasn't. So you can call your brother and go over and see, you know, if she's okay. That kind of technology, or letting you know that the door opened at midnight, or that somebody's locked the door. It's about safety and helping you. It's no different than automatic locks on your car. It's just how we use it. The other thing is there's a couple companies that have sensors in senior living, and I want to just remind you that it's not about watching somebody and collecting, you know, data on them to use against them. It's about having data and to create patterns, so that if Mary normally gets up 2 times in the middle of the night and the sensors tell you that she's got up 7, she might have a UTI, or something else might be going on, or she might not have taken her medication. So it's about data mining and figuring out where things are off, not watching every little detail, because people often think, well, my gosh, we don't have time to watch every little detail. It's not about that. It's about helping to figure out behavior patterns so that you can assist in a better way. Now, I love this. I don't know if anybody ever watched the Jetsons growing up, but it was a 1960s TV show, and I find it kind of interesting that a lot of the things on Star Trek or the Flintstones or the Jetsons we actually see today. I mean, I think this looks pretty familiar to some things that you've seen. This is going to get more and more common. I think we're going to be highly distracted, but it is here, period. The phones have become computers, and they've gotten bigger and bigger, and if you're female, it's even hard to hold in your hand. So they're going to go to the watches where you can get little bits of information that you need, but it's not a full phone, and you have access to it 24/7. You also have to recognize where the money is behind this. It really comes in R&D from the military and from sports. Sports has started this. You know, in the World Cup, we were able to see with sensors in the soccer shoes that people were running 8 miles and how they turn, and they're even able to look at the metrics of who they want to pay millions of dollars to come to their team. The gist is that it's helping us to recognize our behavior and be more fit if we desire to, and set goals. Healthier people also tend to be a better risk for a loan, so bankers are even looking at it, and insurance companies. You might have seen the Basis watch, and then there's a GPS jacket and things like that that are being trialed in senior living. The Basis watch, I actually own this. This can tell me more data than you can about my grandmother if she's staying in your home, even if it's in skilled nursing. So I'm going to show you what it will show you. This is my data. It's uploaded to the cloud. It'll tell me when I woke up, when I went to sleep, how many times I tossed and turned, what calories I burned, my skin temperature, my perspiration, my heart rate, and whether I was in REM or not. And I can put this now on my mother, my father, my grandmother, and get more data than a doctor can give me with a ton of tests. Especially, I made my dad wear mine for a little bit because he was getting very red and I thought he wasn't taking his blood pressure pills, and I was able to see that his heart rate was fine. So it really put my mind at ease. And these things are for under $200. You know, you can go crazy and go with the Google Glass or something like that. I think those are going to take a little bit longer to integrate. But the watches are here to stay. The medical monitoring is here to stay. This is a company that actually just went bankrupt, but it was, and I think it's getting ready to be bought by someone else, but they developed a hearing aid that transmitted through the jawbone. And their next thing was the tooth, and this is actually FDA approved. So if you can imagine, I'm curious to see who will buy them, not having to look for someone's hearing aid. I just think it's a brilliant technology, and that if you don't have to have something that someone's embarrassed about having in their ear or look for when they've lost it, I think that would increase quality of life of the caregivers and then the residents also. These are glasses that are in the testing right now that help the blind to see, and they help someone with macular degeneration see. This was invented out in California, and I can really see these moving forward in the next 5 years. This is a diaper that is available right now. They started in Japan, and you can actually get them in the U.S. now. They started with kids to sense when it was wet. The senior diapers, though, are being outsold over the kids' diapers. And instead of doing the smell test, where not only when you're giving a tour is not a great event, but it's also undignified for the resident, a sensor it sends a signal to the staff and immediately lets you know. So you're not going to be, dealing with trying to figure things out. You actually just get a notification and you can handle it, which I think is, wonderful, especially in Alzheimer's and dementia where someone might not be able to tell you. These are little tablets that are FDA approved, and they react with the stomach acid. It's a copper and magnesium, and it sends an electrical charge, and it lets you know if the medication is being working and how it's being delivered. And medication compliance is a huge issue. So understanding this and that all this technology is there and is coming online really, really fast will make you think of how, all the little problems that you face, whether it's toileting, whether it's medication compliance, whether it's, not knowing that Mary has a UTI and that she got up so many times in the middle of the night until you have to rush her to the ER. These are things that can help you, and they're coming online. Now this right here, I was blessed to be able to interview this company that is out of Germany, and they actually have a whole sensor floor, and it's all computer generated. It's made so that people can stay in their homes longer. Oops, I'm going to go back. And what it does is it measures weight, so it can tell if the resident has fallen or is just standing. It can tell if there's someone that's come into the home that's the wrong weight, and it'll automatically contact a caregiver or 911. It can shut doors and lock doors for the resident if they're demented or whatever the case, to keep them safe but allow them to move through the rest of the home. Now, right now it's about $250 a square foot, so this is really not a technology that we can adapt in the U.S., but they are trialing it, and I hope to see that it comes on board soon. And then next is the Google car. You're probably all familiar with this. It is legal in both Arizona and California. I want you to kind of think outside of Google and the car and think of what it is. Now, I have a video that is kind of quick. It's going to show you who is actually using this. So they are looking at seniors. They are looking at caregivers. They are looking at folks, and I'm going to move a little bit faster. The really great thing about this is that it's independence and dignity. And the test, if you look up the video online, it's just fabulous. It is, I can't drive anymore, I don't see well, or whatever the case is, but I could go where I want to go. So I think especially in California and Arizona, you're going to see this more and more, that people are able to stay in their home longer because they're able to go out and still socialize. They're able to get to their doctor's appointments without, calling their daughter or a friend. In our homes that we work with, I could totally see this. Now, obviously it's not legal right now in the United States except for Arizona and California. But instead of a van, what if your residents could sign out a Google car? And they could go to the doctor, they could go to the mall with their friend, and it's completely safe. It's so safe that they've done studies, and in California, they can get 8 times more cars on the highway with less accidents with automated car technology. And we're seeing that with Ford and Audi and Volkswagen. All of them are actually doing something that will slow down if you have your cruise on, and really can park themselves. So this is just the next step in figuring all that technology out. Now, some people, again, just like the outhouse, kind of take it the wrong way and don't use it the way it should be. Everybody, there are good ideas and there are bad ideas, so this is just a little funny on that. Next is that the Japanese are just moving forward on the technology side because they see a huge dilemma. They have more centenarians than anyone else in the world. They look at it as undignified to be in a wheelchair. So they have developed with the gyroscopic technology, very similar to the Segway, these 2 types of devices. One you can carry with you. The other one is more stationary. But imagine that, I think of my mom wanting to go on a trip and with us, but she's going to get tired and she doesn't want to walk around everywhere, but she doesn't want to be a burden either or be looked down on using a wheelchair, having to get something. That she could carry the one on the left, or we could carry it for her, and then when she's ready to just use it, she can use it. And she can be fully integrated with the family and whatever she wants to do. The next is I don't know if anyone is a soccer fan, but the World Cup in Brazil, the Exoskeleton, which has made huge leaps through the military, through paraplegics. This device right here, this person was paralyzed, and the helmet, it was a world project. Through his mind, there's electrodes in that helmet. He is controlling muscle stimulators that allows him to walk for the first time since he's been paralyzed. It's pretty unbelievable. And we are becoming integrated with machines. And you might not think that, but think about if you've ever had knee surgery, if someone's had a pacemaker, if you have ever worn a knee brace. We're getting there. It's just, I think we think it's a little too techy, but we're already there. We're already man and machine. I'm going to show you a little bit about this video. It's a very quick video, but essentially this is a prosthetic, and he is controlling that completely with his mind. And he's able to do very subtle movements, which is, for me, I mean, it's a little freaky, but it's awesome. And I'm sure for him, for quality of life, just changes everything. The next is Rewalk, Rewalk. I think you probably are aware of this. This is FDA approved. But this, CBS did a story on this. Someone that's paralyzed, this will actually get them upstairs and changes their quality of life. In Japan, you can actually rent something similar, but folks are using them not for folks that are paralyzed, but they're using them for older adults. For about $2,000 a year, you can rent an exoskeleton, get anywhere you want to go. They also have them for your arms. They're using them a lot in manufacturing and military services, emergency services, and healthcare. So it can take your regular muscles without the stress on them, give you 30% more strength so you don't have a back injury when you're lifting a resident or someone. And then lastly, this kind of shows how this one's called the Hulk, and how firemen have to have tons of weight on them. And then they have to go into a burning building and rescue someone. So they have all kinds of weight. They're carrying this on top of themselves. Now they're going into a burning building with a mask, and then they've got to be able to carry somebody out. So when they put on the Hulk, which is actually available, and it increases the muscle, very similar to the Japanese exoskeletons, and they're able to do it with little stress on their body. It's pretty amazing, I think. And if you can think about anybody in rescue or military or ER or a emergency person, a paramedic, that they would be able to really help you based upon wearing an exoskeleton. I think we're all for that. So now we're going to move on to a very simple but older technology called induction loop systems. You may be aware of this. Michigan is huge on this, as is Texas. The technology really is a Scandinavian thing, and throughout Europe they've been using it. This is fairly simple. I think this is one of the best technologies out there, and we don't utilize it. What it essentially does is it lays down a loop or a coil loop, and it ties into anyone that has a hearing aid. If you have a microphone, that noise or that speech goes directly to the hearing aid. When you don't have that, louder does not always mean better. It can be more confusing. And what they have found is that if you have a chapel in your home, or you have a game room, or a dance hall, or you're doing yoga, that this really increases resident engagement. In Michigan, they're putting them in airports and stadiums. There's story after story about people crying because they were able to hear their great-granddaughter's recital or go back and hear the sermon again. It just gets everybody integrated. Relatively cheap for a room of the size that I'm showing you on the screen is about $1,200. Imagine the increase in quality of life and activity and people actually engaging in something because they can hear. I think this is a real win, and we should be doing this all over. So that goes through sensors and wearable technology. I just want you to ask yourself, what of those could you use to increase the quality of life of your residents, reduce your risk, and improve your bottom line? Next, we're going to go through OLED lighting technology. It's fairly quick, but we started off with the candle. We went to the gas lamp. Then we went to the incandescent, and we haven't done a lot to change except for in the last probably 5 years. We decided the incandescent was evil. We went to the fluorescent. We don't like the light temperature and color of that, but we do like how it saves energy. And the LED was too expensive, and it wasn't very color corrective. But GE, Philips, and LG have figured it out. So now we can use kind of the same component where we hook into a light bulb, but we can use an LED, and we can control it by our phone. We can change the color temperature. We can do all kinds of wonderful things. What we can also do is, I don't know if you have any of these, but if you have an existing facility or home, a lot of times the plenum spaces is very, very tiny. So redoing lighting, you don't have the ability to stick it up into the ceiling. These LED panels are about 1/8 of an inch thick, so you can actually put them to the surface of the ceiling and not have it look horrific. You're going to see in the photograph that you can light up handrails. You can do door frames and casing. The photograph on the right-hand side is of an LED light that we did in amber for memory care, and that is our night light. It is on a sensor, so it only comes on when the lights are off. And it really helps to orient the person. It doesn't wake them up, but it's the entire door frame, so it's not like somebody's going to bump into the door. It really shows where it's at. So there's a lot of unbelievable things that we can do. On the crown molding, we can actually tie it to a computer system and mimic sunrise, full daylight, sunset, and night, and help with the circadian rhythm, which helps with sundowners. And then to go a little bit further, you've probably heard, maybe not, about the OLED plastic. This will really change everything. It basically is wallpaper. So Samsung was showing it off in 2014. We're going to be able to wallpaper a TV or a computer. We're going to be able to fold our phones in our pocket. It's really going to be dynamic, and this shows you how quick and the technology is changing. I would say in the next 5 years, we're not going to see the old technology any longer. So in that, I just want you to think of, is there anything in there that could improve the quality of life of your residents, reduce risk, or improve your bottom line? The next is crowdsourcing and gamification. So a lot of people think of crowdsourcing, and they really think differently. Crowdsourcing is, I've got here an Amish barn raising, and essentially that's crowdsourcing. It's that you have access now to the entire world to help you get things accomplished that you didn't have before for relatively low cost. It is amazing what you could get done. Gamification is about We Fit. I mean, if you think about gamification, it's how do you get people to play a game and learn and engage. Those two things mixed together can be very powerful for you and very low cost. This video, we're not going to probably go through the whole thing, but if you look up the XPrize, it is about crowdsourcing to the end. They basically offered a contest to be able to figure out how to improve quality of life. And what they're developing is a phone that will diagnose your healthcare issues. And when you do that, it changes everything. With Watson and IBM's, everything that they're doing, they're able to now diagnose things faster than doctors can. And if you're over in Africa and you're a girl that is not valued, they want to put this in the palm of her hand and really help her to be the medicine man and be able to help get things that are very simple treated very quickly. So what they're developing, and it should come out this year, is an actual system that will allow you to, anytime, look at what's going on and figure out in your life. So if you take that watch that I was talking about and put it on steroids, you're going to be able to see things that you couldn't see before, but you're not going to be held to the waiting online for your doctor to answer the phone and the receptionist and then getting the appointment and then finding out that you're, 2 weeks later you're still not in and then you're getting your lab results. I mean, this is going to dramatically change healthcare and will affect senior living. So as we go through that, right now I'm going to, it's locked up a little bit. There we go. Okay. We are going to talk about how you could utilize this. You probably all use WeFit. WeFit is one of those things that we're very familiar with. It doesn't take any time or effort. It engages folks. It allows them to exercise. We do Wii bowling. We do a lot of the Wii things. And when we think about neuroplasticity and what we're able to do with the brain, it's amazing. You should really leverage those programs as much as possible. When I talk about low tech, it's not always low tech from a standpoint of not being electronic. Sometimes it's just what's out there that you can already use. I know some of the top rehab facilities in the country use WeFit instead of the $10,000 balance machines. And hopefully, we're going to wait for the program to respond, but I'm going to keep on going. The next thing is gamification. So as we're thinking through this, I want you to understand that gamification can be very simple. So it can be the amount of, can you figure out some games for residents to do that get them engaged or that your staff can be engaged on. It is important to know, I'm actually going to, I think, restart this. It is important to know that when we do games with how we want behavior to change, people have fun. So if you could increase your compliance or your, what do I want to say, your medication compliance, and just bear with me for 1 second. I'll go to slideshow, and from the current slide, okay, I'm just going to flip through these real quick. If you could increase your outcome because you gamify it or get people more engaged in what you're accomplishing, then it's a huge win. What if you could gamify people talking about your home and how awesome it is and offer rewards for that? All of this technology is available and really at a cheap price through crowdsourcing. What we're going to, I'm going to show you something real quick here. Let me get to it. All right, we're back on track. Thank you for your patience. Is that this is a game called Salvation. So what they've done is they've figured out that people die from malaria and there's 600,000 cases every day. There's not enough folks to figure out how to diagnose it. So they created a game, and with little training, people are able to diagnose it and also do cancer diagnosis. With an hour's worth of training, they're able to get to a 99% accuracy rate. So this is with non-professionals. So if you can gamify something and you can save between 3 and 35% of cancer fatalities, that's huge. And this can be anything. This just shows you on the extreme what they're doing and how they're doing it. This is another gamification, which is called folded. People are doing this for fun. They're folding DNA proteins, which is something that a computer can't do. Why is it important? Because you have to fold proteins to be able to model drugs to see whether they work or not. Now we're going to go on to something that really tells a story. And if you've ever seen this, this is about experiments on can we modify behavior if we make it fun. So what this is a video where they decided to install steps with a piano and make it fun. And could they get people to modify their behavior without doing anything but installing this fun piano? What they found was amazing. And they've done this with traffic lights, they've done this with trash cans, and you can actually go online and see all the different experiments they do. So if you could get your residents to do more of what you want them to do from an engagement standpoint, from a quality of life standpoint, your staff, and everybody's having fun doing it, I think that's a huge win. You just got to kind of open up your mind and figure out how you could do this. And I think that at the end here, there we go, 66% more people chose the stairs over the escalator. For me, that's a huge win. I can't even imagine 66% of the people doing more of what we would want them to do. I think it would be, you know, it's a huge win if you get 10%. And it's fun. No one feels manipulated. The next thing is neuroplasticity. You've probably figured this out, that everybody's talking about brain games and how we used to think you couldn't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, you can. And it's really important. It is about the brain being able to regrow and redo, and that is through engagement. That goes back to our gamification and why it's so important. It's not just about modifying behavior. It's about keeping our brain working and oiled and growing and really, you know, increasing the interactions and the firing. And I always kind of look at the scarecrow and how he gets his diploma, and then of course, you know, here we've got tons of softwares out there that are available to you. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a senior software, although I would highly recommend it from a sizing standpoint and whatnot. But these are relatively cheap. There's tons of them out there. Elevate is one that's free that you can use. I just want you to kind of think of how you could maybe do staff reporting and compliance, resident enrichment programs, or marketing that you could do through crowdsourcing or gamification. And this goes back to, can you improve the quality of life of the residents, reduce your risk, and increase your bottom line? So next we're going to talk about robots and technology, and you're probably like thinking, oh, there is no way we're going to use robots and technology in senior living. And again, I go back to the Jetsons, that here you have Rosie the robot, and I love this. You know, she's like, you know, the tutor, the teacher, everything. Well, the kids today are actually using this. They have teachers that are Skyped in. They have robots. They are doing teleconferencing on steroids across the world with the best professors at universities. This is Hector, and I've actually got to interview them. Hector is over in Europe, in Scandinavia, and Hector is a lot like Rosie the robot. They use her in dementia and Alzheimer's. They use her for, or him actually, for games. If someone wants to stay in their home longer, Hector can be used and rented, and to actually Skype or talk to a doctor. And they're finding that there's no barrier. People really are interacting well. Europe has this whole program on senior living that they're trying to see how technology can really improve dignity and independence and quality of life. And they're doing it globally as a European Union. Telemedicine. Again, we're going back to the Jetsons. It's pretty common. And what I want to have you think of is, could you use that? I don't know if you watch Big Bang or not, but this is somewhat of what Sheldon was doing at one point. The beam, though, is real. When travel became very expensive and the economy went down, the beam became a big deal, so that you could basically sign in Skype on wheels, roll it around, and talk to whoever you wanted without traveling. We actually have 2 of these and are doing a contest right now for folks to use them in their homes and see how residents and family members and caregivers react with it. It might be that my mom's in Florida or grandma's in Florida, and I want to, every time I call, she's not there. So I sign out the beam and I drive it around and I go see where grandma's at. I could even exercise with her. I could go to dinner with her even though I'm not in Florida. As a doctor, I can walk and see a resident's gate. I can do house visits. As the leader of maybe the homes that I now, I started out with 2 and I only have, and I have 20, I could go and say hi to the residents every day and, sign into it. Or let's say I'm the maintenance director for 20 homes and something breaks, and I can actually sign that out and walk down to where the situation is and talk and look at what the administrator or executive director is saying that the problem is, versus trying to figure it out with blinders on, essentially. I think there's so many opportunities here, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this contest. This little video is just kind of show you kind of fun that we've come pretty far. And this is Osimo. You've seen him before. The big deal about him is that he's become so fluid and so moving that it's really hard to understand where the line is between robot and human any longer. Paro is another robot, and it's a seal. And Paro actually is for Alzheimer's dementia, and it helps to really bring someone out of their shell and interact with them. But it's not a dog or a cat that could potentially bite. It doesn't have to be taken out, and it really improves quality of life. So on the robots and technology, again, I want you to think and ask yourself, how could it improve my quality of life for the residents, reduce risk, and improve my bottom line? Now we're on to number 5, which is data mining and artificial intelligence. And remember, I told you that, these things are all tied together. When we were talking about sensors, data mining was a huge part of it. You really can't do sensors without data mining. Artificial intelligence, you can't do the sensors without that either. So this all relates. Google understands it. Facebook understands it. I don't know if you've ever been on those, and you start to see all these ads are tailored towards exactly what you're looking for, which is really weird. Also a little creepy, but very useful, that I might be looking for something. So they start delivering content and messages to you that's particular to you. And in this world of noise, that's very helpful. That's what I was talking about delivering the message of, hey, sending you a notification because Mary's gotten up 7 times and her norm is 2. It's not about telling you every single detail so that you don't even want to look at it. It's about telling you the relevant information to you and how you could utilize it. We talked a little bit about Watson. Watson is a supercomputer that really has changed everything. It's artificial intelligence, and why Jeopardy was such a big deal was for a computer to be able to understand a question and answer it versus just data mine details out of the internet, had to take and put it into the artificial intelligence or AI category. So that was really the breakthrough. What they've been working on, which used to be Anthem and now it's WellPoint, is that they feel that there is 30% of the dollars are wasted in healthcare, and that if they can utilize artificial intelligence with doctors and nurses, they can reduce costs and increase outcomes. So right now, Watson's successful diagnosis rate for lung cancer is 90%. A regular doctor is 50%. So I ask you, who do you want to go to? I know it gets very scary, but who do you want to go to? Do you want to go to Watson, or do you want to go to a doctor that you could just basically toss a coin on? With that comes infinite computing. None of this could happen without infinite computing, and this is just kind of to educate you. But the deal is that it used to be big governments and big companies that only had access to these enormous mainframes. Right now, though, you can actually rent it, and we're getting in a renting society. You can rent cars. We have cars and bicycles all over in my town that you can rent for just what you need. You can rent an apartment for just what you need for a night or a day with Airbnb. So what that opens up is a whole group of entrepreneurs and folks that have great ideas but didn't have the computing power to be able to leverage them and make them happen. Well, now they can rent Google's computers for an hour to do what they need to do, develop apps for you that never could have been done before. So the future is just incredibly bright on this. And what I want you to know is that when you merge crowdsourcing and infinite computing, you can solve problems faster and cheaper. They're going to increase how fast new technologies will be created, and they'll become accessible to everyone. Now, we all know about the drones and kind of what they've been doing, and they've actually, Amazon came on fairly large. They've had a little bit more problems than they thought. We've seen a little bit more with sporting events and people having fun with them, and now the FAA is getting involved and trying to make sure that people don't do wrong stuff with them or cause problems in flight paths, because they can really go up quite high. But there is a company in San Francisco that is actually testing delivering pharmacy items. So for $2 a prescription, you could have your medication delivered to you. That changes, as it was $1 a prescription, now it's $2. But imagine that your potential resident, and I'm just going to be honest here, the studies say that 90% of the people that are your market don't want to come to you. And we all know that. We don't want to talk about it. But part of the reason they come is they can't drive anymore. They can't get out. So the Google car, medication getting delivered, they don't have to go out. You're sick, you want it delivered, it comes right to your doorstep, and it's a little bit more money. Groceries can be delivered. So technology is changing and becoming competitive with you, which means you have to up your game and take care of the basic needs on Maslow's ladder and really increase the quality of life and go to the higher levels. So with that, I just want you to think again, how could you improve the quality of life of your residents, reduce risk, or improve your bottom line? And then the last technology is 3D printing. You're probably unaware of this, but 3D printing, Invisalign is 3D printing. Would not have been available if someone hadn't done that. So it changed the face of braces. But 3D printing happens in prototypes, dentures, hearing aids, organs, tissue, food, leather, and yes, I said organs. So they are printing hearts and kidneys for transplants. 3D printing is very complex. It can do a lot of things that we couldn't do. It's become incredibly cheap. And you're going to see that when kids are using it to print Barbie parts and clothes, that it'll become just a technology that everybody has in their home, just like the regular printer. Now imagine you have a 3D printer and you have a file that is for your residents' dentures, and they lose them. You just print off a new pair and they're able to use them. Or that the dentures aren't fitting anymore. They go and get a fitting and they get printed off, and it's not one of these big things anymore that it's months and weeks and it costs a lot of money. It's just a pretty easy thing. Same thing with hearing aids. Some of the reason why this technology has really taken off is because the athletic companies are very into this, as is the military and fashion. So these are New Balance shoes that were 3D printed. If you can print them and customize them to the color that you want in a store, versus manufacturing thousands of them and hoping that the color that you have somebody's going to buy, that's a huge win for them. 3D printing for hearing aids. Again, same thing with the dentures. Imagine that your resident loses their hearing aid, that we haven't gotten to the jawbone hearing aid yet, and you just print off a new one and pop it in. It would just, I think, reduce a lot of stress for a lot of people. And then lastly, food. And I love the Jetsons. I don't know what the deal is, but they got it right. So I think of, my Easy Bake Oven, and I look at the 3D printed food, and I am just shocked at how good it can be. It started out here in the U.S. more for cake decorations, but again, over in Europe, there's a company called Bizun, and there's another one, and they are actually 3D printing food for seniors. They're specifically doing this. You know how you take, when someone can't swallow properly anymore, the hamburger, and you put it into a blender, and now it's a hamburger Slurpee? I don't want to eat that. You don't want to eat that. But they need their protein. It's what you were cooking for everybody else. And they have swallowing issues. And that's a bigger deal. Well, now with this, they've hired 5-star Michelin chefs to develop recipes so that you can actually print food that looks great, tastes great, but it's easy to swallow. And so the dignity and the quality of life has improved substantially with this. I really think this is a huge win, especially for memory care, anyone with dysphagia. But it's coming on board very quickly. They are actually testing these out in the U.S. right now, but in Europe they're full on using them. Here's another kind of photograph of some of the food and how it can be prepared. I mean, it looks great. So with that, I'm going to go back to, how could you improve your quality of life of your residents, reduce your risk, and improve your bottom line with 3D printing? And then there is a video that I'd like you to look up. I'm going to show you a little bit here, but it's from Corning Glass. And glass is also going to be a really big deal. It is one of the most flexible materials out there. It's one of the stronger materials out there, but you can also do so much with it. You can do visualizations. You can figure out how you're going to integrate folks and really bring the outside in. It will be like wallpaper. Your glass walls, you have already seen this with TVs in a glass mirror, or shades that you turn on, that it's just like a vapor that's in between the windows. So this is here, and it's happening. It's happening more in South America than anywhere else because they didn't have an infrastructure problem. They didn't have all the factories and everything, so they're really taking hold of it. But it's a pretty neat technology that's going to be really changing how we view what we do. And lastly, we're going to talk really about the future. So I was very blessed to work with and interview the GE folks and their vision for 2025. They're looking at specifically at seniors and how they can integrate technology in the future and what they see. And remember, these are the guys that, they said microwaves were going to be big and refrigerators. And for us, all of this feels like that. It feels very space age. But if you look at the surface, it's keeping hot coffee hot. It's writing a note. It could be an alarm clock, and that's one of those glass surfaces. This is just fantastic. It is, you've seen something like this, but it was just basically a filter for water. Imagine putting your finger on that fingerprint symbol, and it reads your diagnostics, and it tells you and fills in what vitamins you might need or how much you need for the day. It actually helps you. Next, and this technology is actually here, been out for about 10 years, is that a washer and a dryer all in one. The big deal is that they're looking at is that clothing technology has now moved to the place where you can take the air out and you can store your clothing in the same component. So if you imagine that your residents' clothing now can fit in a shoebox seasonally, or your linens because you're taking all the air out, that opens up a huge amount of space, not only in existing homes, but in new of what you can do with it. So that kind of technology is very, very exciting to me because closets is a big deal, making them bigger in independent living and then assisted living, and then how do we take things away and where do we store them and how do we do this? I think that'll be really helpful. They're already doing, the mirrors that I talked about. If you stay at a fancy hotel, you're able to do this. This is one of the future items that they believe the medicine cabinet will go to, that you put your hand on there, it reads all your vitals, sends any kind of issues to whoever you need to send them to, and it will dispense your pills. So it's just an automatic thing that gives you what you needed to give. The reason for the biometrics, I'm told, is that let's say you get your pills but you don't take them. You might be like my father. Well, then that is a really easy thing to be able to see because it's going to tell you that his blood pressure is off or his sugar is off or something like that. I think it's kind of a neat technology that will happen very fast. And then lastly, the 3D printers. They really feel these are going to be in the home, no different than a microwave oven or a convection oven. They're going to start out with like taking your leftovers and making dog treats out of them and reusing them that way, or cat treats. And then you probably already use this, but induction units and restaurant-style cooking so that your countertop can be multifunctional and you don't have to have as much space. And then this video is a little kind of showing you where Samsung is headed or where it could go. We're looking at charts that I think can be phones that can be very, very tiny, that can flip. I'm not going to show you the whole video, but they're really looking at how do we, this is kind of where I'll start it. can you imagine your electronic medical records being in the same size as a cigar holder? So in that, I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I think that we've covered a lot of technologies, from really, really small to very large. I don't want you to go back to thinking that you're walking on the tight wire across Niagara Falls. I want you to kind of think back through this presentation and say, what's the simplest and fastest, easiest or cheapest thing that I can do, and start there. And then build your technology muscles and move forward. And we talked about, just to close it, is sensors and wearable technology, OLED lighting, crowdsourcing and gamification, robots and technology, data mining and artificial intelligence, and 3D printing. And then if we actually have a book, we've done a lot more research, and this will be in hardcover print probably in the next month or so. But to kind of sum this up is that anything and everything will be in the hands of the consumer. So you've got to figure out what you want to integrate into your current home to be able to help that and not kind of be stuck, as we talked about in the tale, of either fear or ignorance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for that fascinating presentation. Again, that's Lisa Cheney of Mosaic Design Studios. We're a little bit short on time. We want to give as much content as possible, so our contact is there, and I'm happy to send out the recording if you're interested as well. So if you do have any questions, you can either follow up with Lisa or Greg or myself. Again, this is Robert from retirementhomes.com. Thank you so much again for joining us, and hopefully you can join us next month. We'll send all of the information as well. Take care.